If you open your mouth, you'll wake up with a dead rat stuffed in your clothes. That's what he said as he pulled my blanket with one hand and locked the door with the other. That night, I learned that there are things children shouldn't know. Just endure. I lived through a nightmare that I wouldn't wish on anyone. My name is Carolyn May Whitaker. Today, I am 87 years old. I live in Mobile, Alabama, and I carry in my bones things that should never have entered even the heart of an adult, let alone the soul of a little girl. But I'm alive, and if I'm alive, then it's time to speak up. The first time my mother left me at that house, she said with a smile, "It will be good for you, my daughter. Norma is a good woman. She will treat you like a daughter." And I, with my little flannel suitcase in my hands, believed her. I believed her because children believe. But that good for me lasted exactly 3 days. On the 4th day, Danny came into my room. Danny was my stepmother's son, 16 years old, soft-spoken, easy smile, and a look that made me feel weird from that first day. You know when it feels like your stomach is turning, even though you don't understand why? Well, that's how it was. But no one listens to an 8-year-old girl with a scared look on her face. Everyone just saw him helping to carry firewood, washing his stepfather's car, offering me chocolate like a nice little brother, except no brother locks the door from the inside. That first time, he just came in and stared. He sat on the edge of the bed. He called me little doll and asked if I had ever kissed anyone. I was shaking so much I couldn't even answer. He laughed as if it was funny to see me scared. Then he got up, messed up my hair, and left. I thought that was the worst that could happen. I was stupid to think that the worst would ever end. The next day, my mom came to visit me. She arrived with cake and a new jacket. I wanted to tell her. I swear I did. But Danny walked through the room and looked at me. He just looked. For a second. That was enough. I swallowed it all. I smiled at my mother and told her I was enjoying my new school, my new home, my aunt. I told her everything was fine. Lies taste like blood, my dear. I discovered that then. Norma, my stepmother, was one of those women who thinks that everything bad is the fault of the child's mother. If your mother had raised you right, you wouldn't have those sad eyes, she would say. Sad eyes. That's what she saw. She didn't see the locked room, the torn blanket, the smell of fear impregnated in the pillow. She didn't see the trail of dead rat that appeared under my bed a week later after I tried to hide behind the living room sofa while Danny called me. And me? I pretended it was a nightmare. Kids do that, right? When the pain is too much, we pretend we're asleep. We pretend it will go away if we stay quiet enough. But it didn't go away. It only got worse. Danny started waiting for my mom to leave. He started calling me softly at night. He started saying it was our game, that I was special. And I started to become more and more withdrawn. I didn't sleep anymore. I just passed out from exhaustion. I spent the day hiding from the house, from the stairs, from the smell of disinfectant in the bathroom where he sometimes waited. Norma said I was weird, that I didn't smile like I used to. And then the punishments began. Yes, because the problem was me, the girl who didn't smile, who didn't talk, who was always cowering. I started to be punished for being fussy, for looking strange, for not interacting properly. And then school started to look askance too, because a child who is too quiet is disturbing. But no one did anything. No one wants to get involved in ugly things. It's easier to think that the child is problematic. I remember one night, it was raining hard, you know, and he said that no one would hear anything with all that noise. He said that thunder was our ally. I wanted to disappear. I asked God to turn me into dust, into wind, into a dry leaf, but nothing happened. Only I stayed there motionless, praying not to die inside, because on the outside, I didn't even feel anything anymore. After that, I started pretending I was sick. Any excuse not to go home. I made up stomach aches, fevers, nausea, but Norma thought I was just trying to get attention. She started locking me in my room to reflect. And who came to see how I was doing? Danny. At 9 years old, I already knew the taste of despair. I already knew how to measure the silence between footsteps in the hallway. I already knew how to hold back my tears so my nose wouldn't run and he wouldn't notice. I already knew the weight of the phrase, if I tell, no one will believe me. Everyone thinks I'm a good boy. And I was. To others, I was. Danny was the model son, the polite young man, the boy who took his grandmother to Mass. Only I knew who he was when the door closed. If you're still here with me, leave your like. Every like is like a hug for this old lady here, because the worst is yet to come. I remember clearly the day I tried to hide behind the closet in the basement. It wasn't big, I barely fit in there, all curled up, but it was the only place he hadn't tried yet. I just wanted a little peace, a space where my body wouldn't tremble with every noise coming from upstairs. But he found me. He found me like someone who already knows where to look, like someone who can smell fear. He pulled me by the arm with force and said, laughing, "You like to play hide and seek, don't you, little doll? But those who hide get beaten." And I got it. Not with a slap, with words, with touch, with the kind of thing that leaves a mark only on the inside but weighs heavily for a lifetime. That night I slept on the basement floor. It wasn't even a punishment. I stayed there because I thought he wouldn't come back. But he did. He came back with the same little smile, the same fake brotherly manner, the same disgusting phrase. "Only you and I know how good it is. Don't ruin it." And I didn't ruin it. I just cried quietly, hidden away. I learned to do that very early on, you know, to cry without making a sound, so as not to provoke him further. My mother began to notice that I was thinner. She said I must be missing her. Little did she know. Missing her was the least painful part. What weighed most heavily was the certainty that no one was going to get me out of there. Not even her, because she believed in Norma. She trusted that woman more than she trusted herself. She's strict, but she's good. She teaches you to be strong. Oh, if only she knew. I dreamed of a phone call, of someone calling and saying, "Come home, your mother misses you." But the phone didn't ring, and even if it did, I had already become a statistic of forgotten children. One less, one who is better off with her stepmother because she needs discipline. Discipline. That was the name they gave to my exile. Norma started picking on my clothes. She said I was showing off. At 8 years old, wearing an old t-shirt and second-hand shorts. But that's what she said. She said I provoked Danny, that no man messes with a good girl. I was speechless. How can a woman say that to a child? But she did, and she said it with conviction. And if I talked back, I got a slap. Not for the answer, but for the look. You look just like your mother when she wants to challenge me. And look where she ended up. She left her daughter for others to raise. I started to get really sick. Feverish body, constant stomach pain, bleeding that shouldn't exist at that age. I was taken to the doctor once. An old doctor, a family friend, who didn't even want to know. He gave me medicine and said it was something that happens to girls who grow up too fast. And life went on. For them, it always went on. School became my refuge. But even there, I was the weird girl. I didn't laugh. I didn't play. I hardly spoke. One day, a teacher took me aside and asked me gently, "Is there something you want to talk about, Carolyn?" I just nodded. That was all I could do, because I knew that if I spoke, if I said anything, Danny would find out. He always found out. I don't know how, but he did. One day I ran away, not very far, just to the end of the street. I hid behind Mr. Higgins' old shed. I stayed there until dark, but it didn't work. Danny found me. He said I was stupid to run away so close to home. He said that next time he would tie my feet, and I believed him, because he always kept his promises. After that, I was silent for days, literally. No sound came out of my mouth. The school principal called Norma. She said it was drama, that I was too spoiled, and she told me to stay locked in my room longer to see if I would go back to normal. And I did. I went back because silence no longer protected me. I went back so I wouldn't get beaten. I came back because deep down, I didn't even know who I was anymore. At 9, I no longer dreamed. I didn't draw. I didn't run. I just counted the steps in the hallway, the minutes until the alarm went off in the morning, the seconds between the click of the lock and his fingers touching the blanket. And Norma would say, "You're cold. You have no empathy. It's like you have the devil inside you." Little did she know that the devil was someone else, and he slept in the next room. My mother came less and less. When she did, I smiled, a sad, rehearsed smile, and she believed it, because lying was easier than facing the fact that she had left her daughter in the wrong hands. And I understood. I didn't forgive her, but I understood, until one night, a different night, I woke up to a new noise. It wasn't Danny. It was someone crying. I opened my bedroom door slowly. I saw Norma in the kitchen, sitting on the floor, disheveled, her face swollen, whispering something I didn't understand. And then I saw Danny standing in the hallway, looking at her with disgust, with that same look he gave me. And for the first time, I understood that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't a monster only to me. I went back to my room without making a sound. But that day, something changed inside me. It wasn't hope. It wasn't that much. It was hatred. A quiet, calculated hatred. Because if he did it to her too, then one day, he would slip up, and I would be waiting. After that night, when I saw Norma on the floor, everything became stranger in the house. Not that it was good before, but it affected me in a weird way. I started to look at things differently. Every gesture she made, every step he took, I began to observe more closely, trying to understand if what I saw was real or just another one of my mind's confusions. Because when you grow up in that kind of environment, you start to doubt your own memory. But no, it wasn't my imagination. She was crying. She was hurt. And Danny's look, that cold, disgusted, superior look he gave me every time the door closed. I started testing the limits. Small things. I woke up a little later. I gave shorter answers. I hid less. He noticed, and he didn't like it. But instead of exploding like before, he became quieter. That scared me even more. When a man like him is quiet, it's because he's hiding something. He didn't touch me for 3 days, and that, instead of relief, gave me agony, because I knew something was coming. On the 4th day, he left a gift on my bed, a cheap pink plastic necklace with a note. To my favorite little doll, be good, okay? I trembled from head to toe, not because of the gift, because of the tone, because it was a warning. It was bait. It was a reminder of who was in charge there. Norma walked past the bedroom door and saw the necklace. She didn't say anything. She just gave me that empty look, which I had learned to decipher. I don't care. I can't get involved. I'm not going to protect you. At school, Miss Hill started to insist. She wanted me to participate in activities and presentations. Once, she gave me a fairy role in a spring play. I was speechless. I almost cried. Not out of joy, out of fear. Fear that Danny would see my name in the brochure and think I wanted to show off. I knew he hated it when I drew attention to myself, but there was no escape. I rehearsed quietly, without emotion, just obeying. On the day of the performance, he came. Yes, Danny came to see me. He sat in the 2nd row with Norma next to him. He smiled at everyone, pretending to be the attentive older brother. I could barely speak the lines I had memorized. I was sweating cold. I almost threw up. When the play was over, all the parents applauded. He came up to me and said quietly, with that disgusting little smile, "You look beautiful in a skirt. I bet you charmed everyone." That night I didn't sleep. I sat leaning against the wall with the lamp on. I knew he would come, and he did. He came in as usual, calm. He locked the door. But this time, I didn't cry. I didn't even tremble. I stayed quiet, staring, as if my body were far away. And in a way, it was. I had been disconnecting myself for a long time in order to survive. He noticed. He was confused. He tried to provoke me, to say things, but I remained like a stone, dry, cold. That irritated him. He pushed me. He said I was acting strange, that I didn't like him anymore, that I was ungrateful. He complained about Norma, about the house, about life. And there, for the first time, I saw Danny lose control without touching me. He stormed out, slamming the door. I took a deep breath, not because I had won, but because I was still alive. The next day, Norma gave me some bitter tea. She said it was for cramps. I knew it wasn't. It was her way of saying, I know he's angry, but don't make him worse. I swallowed it in silence, because to question it would be asking for more, and I already had too much. A few days later, my mother showed up. She brought a gift, a new light blue blouse with ruffles on the collar. She hugged me quickly. She said she missed me. I wanted so badly to tell her, to scream, to say everything. But Danny walked by and said loudly, Carolyn has been a princess. We take good care of her. My mother smiled. She said she was happy to see that I was being loved. I smiled back. On the outside, On the inside I was rotting. I started writing, not letters, not a diary. I wrote on pieces of paper, random phrases, codes, words that only I understood. I hid everything inside the cushion of the old chair in my room. It was my only refuge. When I couldn't keep it in my head anymore, I threw it on paper, and even though I knew it didn't change anything, it eased the knot in my throat a little. On a sunny Saturday, Norma went out with the neighbors. Danny stayed home. I tried to lock myself in the bathroom, but he broke in. He said I was his, that no one was in charge but him. He tore my shirt. He threw my notebook away. He said that if I wrote again, he would set my school books on fire, that I should learn that he could read everything he wanted, including my eyes, and that if I looked at him funny again, he would put a live rat in my backpack. I tried to bite my tongue so I wouldn't scream. Not for him, for me, because if I screamed, I would lose what little dignity I had left, and even though it wasn't much, it was mine. After he left, I spent hours under the bed. With dirty fingers, I drew my mother's face on the floor. That was all I had left, the memory of a face I hardly ever saw, but still called home. And so the days went by, swept away by lies, silence, and fear. I waited for something to happen, a miracle, a tragedy, anything that would break the cycle. But life gives no warning, and when the break came, it came without a sound. One day, Norma forgot an open letter on the kitchen table. It was from school. It said that I was sad, showing signs of trauma, that psychological counseling was recommended. She read it, folded it slowly, looked at me with a calmness that hurt more than a slap. She said only this, "You're going to ruin everything, you know. Your mother trusted me." And then I knew I was alone, completely alone. Not her, not him. No one was going to get me out of there. When Norma said I was going to ruin everything, it was like she had sentenced me. She didn't hit me. She didn't yell. She just looked me in the eyes and spoke with that calmness that seems like a cloak, but is really just poison. I should have been afraid, right? But what I felt was something else. A dry nausea, as if my body was warning me. I can't take it anymore. I started planning. And look, angry children think. Even without knowing the names of things, I was already working out a way to get out of there in my head. It wasn't escape, it was survival. I started observing the schedules. When Norma left, when Danny took a shower, where the keys were, how long it took her to come back from the market. Every detail became a piece of the puzzle. I didn't know if it would work, but it was the only thing that kept me going. Every night, I reviewed everything in my head before going to sleep, and every morning, I started counting again. Meanwhile, Danny acted as if nothing had changed. He would come into my room, mess up my backpack, say he was keeping an eye on me, but he didn't touch me as often anymore. It was as if he sensed that something had changed, and it had. Once he left his door open. I went in, quickly. I just looked around. I saw some boxes, photos, old papers, a pocket knife. I took it without thinking. I hid it under my dirty clothes. My heart was racing. My hand was shaking. But I did it. That pocket knife became my shield. Not that I knew how to use it, but just having it there, hidden under the drawer with my socks, made me feel less defenseless. I started sleeping with it, under my pillow. It was my secret, my pact with myself. The days dragged on. Norma became more distant. She always seemed tired. She didn't fight as much, but she didn't take care of us either. The house became a dry place. No one talked. All you could hear was the television, the old radio, and his footsteps. Those damn footsteps in the hallway. And there I was, silent, with adult eyes in a child's body. At school, Miss Hill insisted. "Do you want to talk to me after class, Carolyn?" I shook my head, but part of me screamed, "Yes." I never had the courage. But one of those days I left a note on her desk. I wrote in shaky handwriting, "I'm afraid to go home. He looks at me strangely. He comes into my room." I didn't sign it. I didn't hand it to her. I just left it there, and I ran away. The next day she looked at me differently. I froze. I thought she was going to call someone. But she didn't. She just asked if I wanted to have lunch in her classroom. I accepted. It was the first time I had eaten, without rushing, without fear. After that, she started calling me more often. She said it was to help me with my reading. It did help. But what helped me most was feeling that someone saw me, not as a problem, not as a burden, just as a child. She spoke gently. She let me choose the books. Once, she gave me a new notebook. She said it was my diary, for me to write whatever I wanted. I went home with that notebook hidden in my shirt. I wrote in it that same night. Not pretty words, just truths. He scares me. He touches me. He tells me to be quiet. Norma knows. She pretends. I hate them. At the end of the week, Norma found the notebook. She didn't read everything, just one page, the one that mentioned her. She tore it up. She screamed. She said I was ungrateful, a liar, sick. She threw my clothes down the stairs. She locked me in my room for 2 days. No food, only water. Danny laughed through the door. He said I was being punished because I was dangerous. Me, dangerous. I stayed there, with an empty stomach and a full head, thinking about how no one did anything, how no one ever did anything. That's when I decided I was going to use the pocket knife, not to hurt anyone, not yet, but to show that I wasn't so fragile anymore. I wrote on my bedroom door with the tip of the knife, "No one comes in here anymore." I knew it was risky, but I needed to show it, to myself, to him. The next morning, Danny saw it. He came in. He grabbed the pocket knife. He pushed me against the wall. He said I was playing with fire, but he didn't do anything. He just stood there, wide-eyed. I think he saw for the first time that I wasn't as afraid as before. There was something else, a quiet, cold hatred, the kind that grows when the pain goes beyond the limit. That week, Miss Hill sent for my mother. I don't know what she said, but my mother showed up in the late afternoon with red eyes. She didn't hug me. She just said, "Pack your things. We're going home." I froze. I looked at Norma. She didn't say anything. I looked at Danny. He smiled, that crooked smile, as if he knew it wasn't the end. And maybe it wasn't. In the car, my mother didn't say much. She just said she needed to take care of me, that she had put it off. But now she was going to take care of it. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to so badly, but my body still hurt. My head was still screaming, and her words seemed rehearsed, not heartfelt. I got home and felt strange, as if I had come back, but no longer belonged there. The room was the same, but I wasn't the same anymore, not even close. She tried to talk to me. She asked if something had happened. I said no, because if I said yes, I would have to tell her everything, and telling her everything would be reliving it. I just wanted to forget, but forgetting doesn't happen. We carry it with us, sleeping, awake, growing up. What they did to me didn't stay in that house. It came with me. It entered my veins, and it started to shape me in ways I didn't even realize. On my first night back, I locked my bedroom door. I pushed the dresser against it. I slept hugging the pillow, like I used to. Only now there was no one watching me, and even so I couldn't sleep properly, because fear, once it enters, doesn't leave. It changes its name, but it continues to live with us. In the days that followed, I tried to go back to school. Miss Hill looked at me carefully. She asked if I was okay. I said yes. It was a lie, but the lie was lighter than the pain. She knew. She just said, "I'm here if you need me." And for the first time, that sentence seemed real. But Danny, he wasn't going to let it go. I knew it, and he proved it. The first few days back home were confusing. I was in the place that was supposed to be safe, but I didn't feel protected. Everything seemed the same, but at the same time distant, as if I were a visitor in my own life. My mother tried to show care, cooked my favorite foods, asked if I wanted to sleep with the door open or closed. I responded with gestures, few words, no emotion. It wasn't her fault, but I no longer knew how to trust. In the mornings, she would take me to school. She insisted on it. It was her way of making up for it, perhaps. Miss Hill would greet me with a different look, no longer asking any questions, but always leaving a chair next to hers, as if to say, "Stay close if you want." And I stayed. I stayed because being there, listening to the sound of chalk on the blackboard, pages turning, classmates laughing in the distance, reminded me that the world existed beyond that house where everything happened. But even far away, Danny was still inside me, in my gestures, in my dreams, in my reactions. Sometimes I would wake up sweating, my heart racing, thinking he was next to me. Other times it was his scent that seemed to appear out of nowhere. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself that it was in the past, that now he couldn't do it anymore, but the body doesn't forget. It reacts without asking permission, and when that happened, I could only curl up in a corner and wait for it to pass. One afternoon, my mother went out to buy groceries and left me alone. It was the first time. She hesitated, asked if I would be okay, and I said yes. As soon as she left, I heard a noise coming from the backyard. Everything froze inside me. I ran, locked all the doors, turned off the lights, and hid under the table. I stayed there for over an hour until I heard her calling my name outside. When I went in, she saw me pale, my face wet with sweat. She asked what happened. I said nothing. I said I just dozed off and had a bad dream. She wanted to believe me, and I let her. One of those nights my body started to feel things I didn't understand. It was as if I had a fever, but without the heat. An uneasiness inside, a silent rage, an urge to scream without knowing why. I was no longer the same girl I used to be, and this new version of me demanded a kind of revenge that didn't even have a name. I started writing again. No more diaries. Now I made lists of everything I remembered, of every time he came into the room, of every word he used, of everything I would have done if I had had the strength at the time. I wrote on torn pieces of notebook paper and hid them inside my pillowcase. It was my way of staying alive. A week later, my mother received an envelope with no return address. It was on the table on the porch when we got home from school. She opened it calmly, thinking it was advertising. Inside was a photo of me sitting on the sofa at Norma's house with my t-shirt pulled up to my belly, alone, cowering. The image looked like it had been taken by a hidden camera. My mother turned pale. She didn't understand. She thought it was a montage. But I understood right away. I felt my legs give way. It was him, Danny. Even from afar, even with walls between us, he found a way to remind me that he still controlled me. She started calling Norma, but the number no longer existed. The house was closed, according to the neighbors. Norma had moved, no one knew where. Danny disappeared. And I collapsed. I stopped eating. I didn't talk to anyone. I lay there all day, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. My mother called a doctor. He came, examined me, and said it was psychological. He recommended a therapist. I started sessions with a woman named Dr. Megan. Soft-spoken, kind eyes. She let me color if I wanted to. I never wanted to. I just stared at the wall and wondered if Danny was still watching me from somewhere. On the third appointment, she gave me a piece of paper and asked me to draw how I felt. I drew a circle in the middle and filled it with black lines around it. She asked me what it was. I said, "It's where he lives, inside." She didn't ask who, but she understood. At the next session, she brought a box of dolls. She said I could choose the ones that looked like me. I picked up a small doll with a broken arm without clothes. I put it in a little box and closed the lid. She stared at me. She just said, "We'll leave him there for a while." My mother did what she could, but there was a distance between us, a barrier of silence and guilt that no one could break. She tried to hug me. I stiffened. She tried to ask me questions. I changed the subject. Until one day, tired, she sat in my room, lit a cigarette and said, looking at the floor, "I know you hate me, and I understand. I would have hated myself too." That moved me, not because it was news, but because it was the first time she admitted she was wrong, and hearing that from her hurt in a strange way, as if it opened a wound I pretended I didn't have. The days went by, school, therapy, silence, until I received another envelope. This time they left it at the school door. Inside, another photo. Now I was sleeping, covered up to my neck at my mother's house. In the photo, the focus was on my face, a slight flash in the corner, enough to show me that he had been there, inside, and that broke everything again. I ran to the principal's office. I handed over the letter. Miss Hill was horrified. They called my mother. They called the police. They started an investigation, but he was smart. He left no traces, nothing with fingerprints. No one knew where Norma had gone, or if they were together. The police said they would try, but without more evidence it was difficult. My therapist advised me to write letters to him without sending them. I wrote several, full of hatred, pain, disgust. We burned them together one by one. She said it helped to get him out of my system. I wanted to believe it, but I felt he was still around, like a bad smell that won't come out of your clothes. So I made a plan, one that only I knew about, and this time it wasn't to run away, it was to end it. My way, without blood, without noise, but with scars. After the last photo, I knew he was still around. It wasn't just in my head, it was real. The fear wasn't a ghost, it was an unwanted visitor who still had the key. His face in the shadows of my memories became a concrete threat. And there, locked in my room, looking at the image of my own sleeping face, I decided I wasn't going to wait for the next one, because there would be a next one. Danny was made of poison, and people like that don't stop. They just change holes. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the window, trying to remember if it was locked on the day the photo was taken. It was. I remembered it well. Then he came in. He was inside. At some point, silently, he crossed the space between me and my mother and got close enough to photograph me. That was my trigger. I wasn't just yesterday's victim. I was today's target. And that changed everything. In therapy, I didn't tell her about the plan. I said only what was necessary. I said I wanted to learn how to protect myself. Dr. Megan thought it was a good sign. She talked about empowerment, boundaries, autonomy. I just listened and agreed, but in my head, the only thing that made sense was to watch, to take notes, observe. I learned to listen for small sounds, to differentiate footsteps on the floor, to notice when something was out of place. My mother thought it was trauma. It was, but it was also strategy. I started collecting objects, a piece of wood with a loose nail, a safety pin, a small glass bottle that I filled with alcohol, all hidden in a hole behind the closet. It was like preparing for war, not because I wanted to attack, but because if he showed up again, I needed to be ready. I had already lost my childhood. I wasn't going to lose my life. One afternoon, I found a note stuck to the balcony railing, folded paper with familiar handwriting. "You are beautiful when you sleep. Do you miss me?" Just like that, as if it were a love card. I burned with rage. I tore it into pieces so small they looked like dust. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't take it to the police. I kept silence as my weapon, because now it was a different game. I started writing again. Only now it wasn't about pain. I wrote about him, his full name, nicknames, old address, every sentence I remembered him saying, everything. I wrote 30 pages. I put them in an envelope. I left it under my mother's mattress with a note attached. "If anything happens to me, give this to the police." It wasn't a threat. It was a warning, because now I knew he could still come in, but I wouldn't be the same anymore. I started walking carefully around the city. I avoided deserted streets. I looked twice before crossing. I learned the names of the neighborhood police officers. I greeted each one, not out of friendliness, out of tactics. I became my own vigilante, a girl with the soul of a detective. Miss Hill noticed. She said I was more alert, that I seemed more mature. It wasn't a compliment. It was a result, the kind of maturity that no one should know about. One Saturday, I heard a noise in the backyard. I didn't run. I grabbed a piece of wood. I stood behind the door. Light footsteps, restrained breathing. It was him. I knew without seeing. The window clicked. The latch gave way. When his head appeared, I hit him. Hard. I didn't see his face, just the shadow retreating. I ran to close everything. I turned on the light. I turned on the radio loud. I left the house pulsing. My mother asked what happened. I said it was an animal. She didn't insist, but I knew it wasn't an animal. It was him testing the ground, seeing if I was still that child who trembled at the slightest sound. But I wasn't anymore, and he realized it. The next day, I bought a flashlight with an alarm. I left it on my bedside table. I took my old pocket knife and put it in my coat pocket. I dressed in fear, but walked with courage. My every step was vigilance. I slept with my eyes half open. I dreamed of escape, but woke up determined. I wasn't going to run away, not anymore. I started visiting the city library. I read about survivors. people who took justice into their own hands. Some stories were too much for me, but others sparked something. One of them was about a woman who sent letters to her abuser for years. Never any replies, just cutting phrases. I remember. You're rotten. One day someone will know. That inspired me. I wrote too. I took an old unmarked envelope. Inside a single sentence. If you touch me again, I'll bury you with my own hands. I didn't know where he was, but I wrote it. I burned it on the stove. Just seeing the smoke rise made me feel a little more alive. 2 weeks later, a girl showed up at school. She said she wanted to talk to the principal. She seemed nervous. I watched from afar. She was young, pale, with frightened eyes. Miss Hill called me later. She said the girl was looking for a girl who had lived at Norma's house. My eyes widened. It was about me, but the girl didn't want to hurt anyone. She wanted to talk. She needed to understand. She waited for me outside the school. We sat on a bench. Her name was Elaine. She had been Norma's stepdaughter before me. Danny was also her second husband's stepson. She said she had been through things, similar things. She cried as she spoke. She said she tried to tell someone once, but no one listened. She looked at me with despair and relief. I thought it was just me, she whispered. I nodded. We hugged, without words, without explanation. Two survivors without a manual. Elaine said she was willing to testify, to tell everything, to show that it wasn't a delusion. That gave me a glimmer of hope. For the first time, I felt that maybe he could be arrested, not by me, but by all of us. I went home with a different attitude. I felt that the net was closing in, that Danny could run, but the past runs faster, and when it catches you, it doesn't let go. After talking to Elaine, my mind wouldn't stop racing. I didn't sleep well that night, and the next day I woke up feeling battered, as if I had been beaten again. But it wasn't physical pain, it was the weight of memories on my shoulders. Knowing that he had done to other girls what he had done to me came as no surprise. But hearing it from her, seeing the same emptiness in her eyes, was like staring at my broken reflection. And there, when she cried and said that they had also tried to silence her, I felt that I couldn't let this die in silence anymore. Not for revenge, not for justice, but because if I kept quiet now, he would continue to prey on other girls somewhere in the world. And I couldn't allow that. During the week, the police began to investigate further. Elaine's presence gave strength to what I had told them months before. Miss Hill helped. My therapist handed over records. Everything was gathered and delivered in a report. But even with all that, the feeling was that something was still missing. A link, a piece of evidence, a loophole he was still using to escape, and I knew exactly where it was. Inside the wooden box in his room. That box I saw out of the corner of my eye before it was dragged away. It was the last piece of the puzzle, and somehow I had to get back there. I spoke to Elaine. I told her about the plan. At first she thought it was crazy. She said it was dangerous, that I could get hurt. But when she understood that it wasn't an impulse but a cold decision, she agreed to help me. She found Norma's new address. It was in a remote neighborhood near the scrubland, a forgotten place where no one knocked on the door without a reason. And that's where Danny was. His name wasn't on the mailbox, but the neighbors had seen a strange boy coming and going during the night. It was him. I could feel it. We set a date for Sunday. My mother thought I was sleeping at Elaine's house. It was a lie. We went together to the end of the bus line. We walked the rest of the way. When I saw the house, I froze. It was different from the old one. But the smell was the same. The smell of mold, of rotten memories. Elaine held my hand. Let's just get what we need. Nothing else. I nodded. My heart was pounding, but my feet were steady. The back door was ajar. We entered silently. She stayed in the kitchen, keeping watch. I went upstairs. The steps creaked, but I knew where to step. Years of practice. His bedroom window was covered with an old blanket. The same smell of sour sweat mixed with cheap perfume. The box was there, in the corner. I grabbed it without thinking. It was heavy. I almost dropped it. I heard a noise in the basement. I froze. I took a deep breath. I ran to the stairs. Elaine pulled me by the hand and we left through the back door. The air on the street felt like poison. The adrenaline only subsided when we got on the bus back. The box was on my lap. It stared at me without saying anything. I knew that inside it was more than just objects. It was the evidence, the answers, and perhaps the triggers that would still hurt. I got home and hid the box under the bed. I sat there for hours looking at it, not daring to open it. When I finally took off the lid, I almost threw up. Inside were photos, lots of them, some of me, others of girls I didn't know, all with the same pattern, hidden, vulnerable, caught unawares. There were notes, phrases written by him as if they were poetry, disgusting things, details of nights, notes of what he did, what he wanted to do. I saw my name several times. Excerpts with dates, descriptions, places. It was his diary, and it was what the police needed. The next morning I put everything in a bag. I went to the police station. I handed it to the receptionist and just said, "This is from a monster." The police officer didn't ask any questions. He took it, looked at my face, and called someone. I was taken to a room. There I told everything again, for the 1,000th time. But with evidence in my hands, it was different. Now it wasn't just words, it was a document. It was a scandal waiting to be uncovered. The following days were crazy. Police officers, social workers, people from school, people from the state. Danny was sought. Norma too. The house where they were staying was raided. He was no longer there, but the box was enough for a warrant. Now he was officially wanted. And that, strange as it may seem, gave me peace, knowing that it was no longer just my word against the world, that now he would have to run from the truth. My mother cried when she found out. She apologized. She said she felt guilty. I listened to everything without interrupting, but I didn't hug her because it still hurt, because forgiveness doesn't come with words. It comes with time, and sometimes it doesn't come at all. I continued seeing Dr. Megan. She helped me put the pieces back together. She taught me to breathe without stopping, to sleep with the door open, to like my own body again. It still took time, but I tried, because now for the first time I wasn't just a girl trying to survive. I was someone rebuilding. Elaine stayed close. We became accomplices, not in crime, in life, in pain, in memories that no one else would understand. We exchanged notes. We laughed at silly jokes. Once she said, "You're the only person who makes me feel normal." And I replied, "You're the only one who knows what it means to survive awake." But then, a month later, we got the news. Danny had been seen at a gas station in another state. He hitched a ride with a truck driver. They said he had changed his appearance, shaved head, thinner face, but his eyes, according to the attendant, were the same. Those eyes that seemed to undress you. The case continued. But he, once again, escaped. And that's when I realized that sometimes the monster doesn't disappear. It just changes its lair. And we have to learn to live knowing that it could be around any corner. But now, I was no longer a child. If he came back, I would be ready. There were months of silence after the last news from him. The police did what they could. They released photos, issued alerts in other states, knocked on doors. But Danny was an old snake. He knew how to sneak around. He knew how to disappear. And while the world tried to hunt him down, I kept learning to walk without waiting for justice. I learned to breathe indoors, to take a shower with the door closed, to sleep with the window open without cowering in fear. But to say that the fear was gone would be a lie. It just learned to disguise itself as caution. My mother changed after all. She tried to get closer. She made coffee every morning. She took me to the market, to the park, to sessions with Dr. Megan. Sometimes she told stories from her childhood. She tried to create a bond that guilt had destroyed. I listened, not because I forgave her, but because something in me wanted to understand why she left me in that place, why she believed her stepmother more than her own daughter. In one of those conversations, she cried again. She said she was too young, that she wanted to start over, that she thought she was doing the right thing. I wanted to scream, but I remained silent, because sometimes silence says more than any answer. I went back to school regularly. Miss Hill welcomed me with a big hug, the kind you never forget. The class seemed different. No one laughed at my quietness anymore. Some girls even tried to talk to me, not out of pity, but with care. I gradually came back. sitting more in the middle of the room, raising my hand from time to time, reading aloud. Each of these gestures was a small victory, even though my chest still held an old cry. Over time, I became a girl who no longer cried easily, but also didn't laugh for no reason, a mixture of old people in a new body. The doctor said that my maturity was a defense mechanism. I didn't know the technical name. I just knew that inside me lived a tired old woman who had seen too much. Then, one October afternoon, the doorbell rang. My mother went to answer it. She was wearing no makeup, her apron stained with flour. When I saw her face change, I knew it wasn't a normal visitor. She called me with her eyes, without saying a word. I went to the door, and there he was. Not Danny. A man, a federal police officer, tall, serious, with a low voice. He said they needed my help, that they had found something that could lead to the whereabouts of my attacker. He asked to talk to me in private. My mother wanted to come along. I refused. We went into the living room. He took a folder out of his briefcase. Inside were photos, a backpack thrown into a shed, a notebook with my old notes, fragments of what was left of the box he had hidden. He asked if it was mine. I confirmed it was. He nodded. He said they were searching places Danny used to frequent when he disappeared for a few days, and in one of them they found the material. There were marks, footprints, pieces of hair, but nothing definitive. And then he asked the question that took my breath away. Would you be willing to go there and see if you recognize anything? I stood still. I trembled inside, but I said yes. And the following Saturday, we went. A desolate place at the end of a dirt road, an old abandoned warehouse. I went in with my heart racing, my feet weighing a ton. The smell was strong, of rust and abandonment. Every corner sent a shiver down my spine, until I saw it. $1, mine, the same one that disappeared one day and I thought I had lost. It was there, dirty, with one eye gouged out. In the corner of the room there was a wall with scribbles, crooked words, my name, mixed with other phrases. She smiles when she sleeps. She's mine alone. The anger returned, dry, hot, a hatred that was no longer that of a child. It was that of someone who had survived. We pointed everything out to the forensic team. They collected it, took photos, took notes. The police officer looked at me carefully and said they were closer. I didn't answer, because close for me wasn't enough. He was still at large, and as long as he was at large, I couldn't breathe deeply. The following days were spent waiting. Nothing happened. No arrest, no news, just anguish. I kept going to school, pretending everything was normal, but inside, it was as if I were living in alert mode. I slept with my clothes ready to run. I avoided mirrors at night, and every noise on the balcony was a reason to hold my breath, until one Sunday, when I came back from the bakery with my mother, I saw an envelope at the door, white, no name. I trembled. I didn't want to open it. My mother took it. Inside, just one sheet of paper, hand-drawn with colored pencils. It was me. Hair tied back, yellow shirt, blue backpack, exactly as I was that day at school. And underneath, written, I still see you. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't say anything. I took the paper, went to the backyard, lit a match and burned it. My mother looked at me in silence. She understood. I called the police. They came, they took fingerprints, they collected everything, but they didn't promise anything, because without witnesses, without cameras, without catching him in the act, it wasn't enough. It never was. I went back to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed, and there I made up my mind. If he came, I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to be ready. And this time, he was going to know fear, because I wasn't his little doll anymore. I was the shadow he couldn't erase. After the drawing on the door, I started walking differently, like someone who knows danger is near and still chooses not to back down. My mother wanted me to stay home, to call the police every time I heard a strange noise. I listened quietly, pretending to agree, but inside I knew something else. He was coming back, and so was I. At school, Miss Hill noticed my tougher demeanor. She asked if I wanted to talk. I said no, not because I didn't trust her, but because now was not the time to talk. It was time to wait. Dr. Megan tried to calm me down with breathing techniques and reconnection activities. I did them. They worked for a few minutes. Then everything came back, because no amount of deep breathing can cleanse what has been stuck inside for so long. I started leaving notes for myself stuck to the mirror. You've survived. He's not in charge anymore. The fear is his now. Every morning I read them quietly before leaving. I dressed like armor, loose clothes, closed shoes, hair tied back, so he wouldn't recognize me, or so he would recognize me and see that I wasn't the same anymore. On a Wednesday morning it happened. I left home early as usual. I walked to the bus stop, backpack on my back, headphones in my ears with no music playing. I only used them to pretend to be distracted. When I turned the corner at the laundromat, I saw a car parked there, old, paint peeling, window open, and there, leaning against it, as if he were just another man waiting for someone, he was Danny. Deep-set eyes, unshaven, thinner face. But it was him. He had that same look as if everything belonged to him, as if the street, the air, and I still belonged to him. I stopped. For a second my body froze, but only for a second. Then I turned and went into the store next door. I went to the counter and asked to use the phone. The girl, somewhat suspicious, let me. I called the police. I gave them the address. I described everything. I stayed there until I saw the police car turn the corner. When the police arrived, he was still in the car. He tried to get out, tried to run. He couldn't. They caught him like a cornered animal. He shouted that it was a mistake, that he hadn't done anything. But the neighbors saw. The attendant saw it. I saw it. At the police station they asked questions, lots of questions. I confirmed everything. I showed them the remaining papers, the photos, the notes. They said that now it was different, that now it was serious, that with everything they had, he wouldn't get off easy. I wanted to believe it, but I didn't celebrate, because there was no room for joy there, only relief. My mother hugged me when I arrived. For the first time, I hugged her back. I cried. I cried out of anger, exhaustion, everything. She cried too. And in that silent crying, something was mended. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was a start. Dr. Megan listened to me like never before. She said that now the hardest part was beginning, living without the constant threat, learning to exist without looking over my shoulder. And I understood, because when you spend so much time running away, stopping seems dangerous. Peace is scary. Freedom is heavy. The trial was scheduled. I would have to testify. I was guided, prepared, accompanied. But deep down, no one can really prepare you. Entering that room, looking at his face, hearing the lawyers say that I made it up, that it was an exaggeration, that he was a troubled but good boy, it was almost as cruel as everything he had already done. But I stayed. I didn't bow my head. I told everything, every detail, every wound. Every night I hid inside myself so I wouldn't go crazy. Elaine also testified, firm, clear, with visible pain, but with the strength that only those who have been through it understand. Other girls showed up, two, then another, all with similar stories, details that only he could repeat, and then finally, the net closed in. Danny was convicted, years in prison, but the number didn't matter. What mattered was knowing that now he was the one sleeping behind a locked door, that he was the one who was afraid of the noise in the hallway. And that, my dear, is priceless. After that, I started walking slowly again, breathing without measuring time. I started writing more. I started a new notebook, this time with clean pages, full of plans. I traveled with my mother. We visited places she said she had dreamed of with me. I got to know her again, not as the perfect mother, but as a broken woman trying to fix herself. Like me. School ended. I enrolled in a technical course, psychology, because no one understands pain better than those whose bodies have been marked by it. I want to help girls like me. I want to look each one in the eye and say, "You're not crazy. It wasn't your fault. And yes, you can get out of this alive." Today, with everything I've been through, I say, it's not over. The pain doesn't go away. It changes form. Sometimes it comes back in a dream, sometimes in a smell, a touch, a longer silence. But now I know its name. I know where it comes from, and I'm no longer ashamed to talk about it. After the trial, everyone thought I would get better. Now she'll smile more. She'll live in peace. Everything is resolved. But no one understands what it's like to live after hell. It's not like coming out of a cave and seeing the sun. It's like coming out with your body still bleeding and people demanding a party. My name began to be whispered in the hallways. That girl from the case. Some teachers treated me as an example. Others pitied me. I hated both. I just wanted to be forgotten, but remembered in the right way, as someone who fought, not as a ghost with a name. In psychology class, I began to understand the words that I had only felt before: dysfunction, complex trauma, dissociation, post-traumatic stress disorder. Everything had a name. Everything fit me as if it had been written for me. But even with the right terms, the pain was an old acquaintance. It appeared out of nowhere, in the middle of a class, in the sound of a door slamming, in the smell of cigarettes. Sometimes I cried in the college bathroom for no clear reason. I just felt that my body was still at war. My mother tried to be there for me. We had lunch together on Sundays. We shopped at the corner market. But there was something between us that wasn't coming back. She knew it. So did I. One afternoon, while folding clothes, she said, without looking at me, "If I could trade places with you, I would." And I replied without thinking, "Too late." It was cruel, but it was true. Time doesn't come back. And she only understood that when it was too late. I received a letter from Elaine. She said she was living in another state, married, expecting a child. She said she sometimes dreamed about me, about us running away from that house, laughing like in a movie. But when she woke up, the taste in her mouth was still rust. She thanked me. She said she only found strength because she saw that I had resisted. And there, I cried like I hadn't cried in months, because for the first time, someone said that I was a light, even without knowing it. I went to visit Dr. Megan. I wasn't having regular sessions anymore, but she asked me to have coffee with her. She said she wanted to know how I was really doing. We sat on a bench near the square. She looked at me, as she always did, with respect, calmly. She asked what I saw in the future. I replied, "I want to listen to other girls. I want to be a shelter." She smiled. She said that was healing in motion, and I believed her. I started working as a volunteer at a victim support center. At first, I just organized files. Then I started receiving some teenage girls. I told them a bit of my story, without details, just enough for them to understand that I wasn't there for a diploma. I was there because of pain, and that created a bridge. One of them, named Alicia, was 12 years old. Deep-set eyes, small body, stuttered speech. I remembered myself. I stayed with her for 3 months. Little by little, she opened up. One day, she looked at me and said, "You're the first person who believes in me." And on that day, I understood my purpose. But as always, when everything seems to be going well, life pulls the rug out from under you. I got a phone call. It was from the penitentiary. They said Danny was sick, that he wanted to talk to me. I laughed right away. I thought it was a joke, but they insisted. They said he was at the end, that he didn't have much time, that he wanted to ask for my forgiveness. I spent days thinking about it, not because I wanted to hear him, but because I needed to know if it was a trap. I talked to Dr. Megan. She said only I could decide. She asked what I would gain from it. I replied, maybe nothing. But maybe I need to look him in the eye one last time and show him that I'm not that quiet girl anymore. She understood. I went. I entered the prison room with my heart beating to the rhythm of an old march. He was there, thin, with deep-set eyes, his beard covering half his face. But it was him. He still had that way of tilting his head, as if assessing his surroundings. Only now I was in charge. He tried to speak. He said he didn't know why he did what he did, that he thought it was love, that it was a sick form of affection. I interrupted him. I spoke calmly, firmly. You didn't love, you destroyed, and now you want to come out clean. But I'm not here to absolve you. He started to cry. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. But it didn't move me, because those who truly suffer don't cry when it suits them. I stood up. I said, "You made me think I was dirty. Today I know that the dirt was always yours, and now you die with it, not me." I left without looking back. At the door, I took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, the air seemed less heavy. After that visit, I slept 3 nights in a row for the first time in years. No startling, No waking up with my chest tight. It was as if finally his shadow had left my body. But the strangest thing was realizing that, even with everything, it wasn't joy I felt. It was emptiness, a quiet hole, made of ancient silence. Because when the monster dies, we think we're going to celebrate. But sometimes all that's left is space, and too much space is scary. I continued working at the support center. Alicia kept going strong. She started drawing. She wrote notes to me. I smiled today. I ate everything. I had a good dream. Each of those phrases was a patch on the torn fabric that covered me inside. I glued her pieces together while she, without knowing it, glued mine. And in this silent exchange, we saved each other without making a sound. My mother invited me to dinner. Something simple, just the two of us. We sat on the porch. She made roast chicken, rice with carrots, lemonade, my favorite food when I was little. We sat in silence. After a while, she said, "He died today." I froze. She added, "I got the call. Cardiac arrest. Alone in his cell. No one came to visit him." I chewed slowly. I swallowed the news like someone swallowing a stone. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just looked up at the sky and thought, so that's it. The next day, I received a letter, dated 3 days before his death, handwritten. The handwriting was shaky. They handed it to me at the center. The envelope was stamped with the prison address. I took a deep breath. I thought about tearing it up without reading it, but I opened it. It was short. "Carolyn, I will never forgive myself. You won, and I only exist because I deserve to carry what I did. Maybe one day you will understand, maybe not. I just wanted you to know that I remembered your scent until the end, not as a curse, but as punishment. Danny." I closed the paper. I felt disgust, but also a certain ending. It wasn't regret that he wrote. It was just his pain trying to justify itself. And I owed nothing to his pain. Let him die with it. I burned the letter at the bottom of the yard. I watched the flame consume every line, every curve of that handwriting that once gave me goosebumps. When it turned to ash, I blew on it. And there, in that simple gesture, I felt that perhaps freedom was not a cry, but a breath. I went back home, took a shower, put on my lightest clothes. I opened the bedroom window and let the wind in. For the first time, without fear. For the first time, the wind carried no memories. It was just wind. On Sunday, I took Alicia to see the sea. She had never been there before. She ran barefoot, shouted with joy, got her hair wet. She called me to come in. I stayed on the sand watching, and when she said, "You can play too, you know," I got up. I was afraid of water, since I was little, but I went in. One step, then another. The water hit my knee, my chest, and there I was, my heart beating fast, but my soul light, and I realized this is what survival is. Going into the water, even if you're trembling, and knowing you can touch the bottom. After that, I started writing everything down. Every bet, every night, every decision, every pain, every choice. A friend from college read it. She said I should publish it. I thought about it. I was reluctant. Then I accepted. The world needed to hear it. Not to applaud me, but to understand that no girl is born ready to carry that kind of memory. But if she is forced to, she can become invincible. The book came out 6 months later. Small, simple. It was called While I Was Sleeping. The title came from that first photo he took of me, sleeping. Today, sleeping is when I dream. Before, it was when I survived. I received messages from mothers, from girls, from women in their 40s and 50s, saying that only now did they have the courage to tell, that because of what they read, they decided to speak up. And then I saw that pain, when shared, does not disappear, but it changes owners. It spreads, and it becomes a bridge. My mother read it. She called me crying. She said she didn't know, that even though she raised me, she had never seen it. She asked for forgiveness again. This time I said, "It's okay. I know. It's not that I forgave her, but I stopped carrying the weight. I returned it to where it belonged. Today I walk the streets of my city without looking back. I go into stores. I greet people. I accept hugs. Not all of them. Only those I know want nothing in return. I still have bad days. Sometimes I wake up with my body locked up. Sometimes I avoid touch, but I no longer hate myself for it. I understand myself. I embrace myself. I respect myself. And if someone asks me who Danny was, I say, a man who tried to extinguish a light, but who ended up being the reason it shone brighter. Time passed, not in a beautiful way like we see in movies. It passed like an old car on a dirt road, shaking everything, kicking up dust, leaving a trail, but it passed. And one day I realized that I hadn't thought about him before going to sleep in a long time. I didn't even feel that knot in my stomach every time someone said the word bedroom. That's how it was, without a set date, without ceremony. I only noticed when I woke up wanting to make coffee and hum a song. Life came back, not like before, because before never existed, but it came back as a new place. A place where I could walk with my hair down, wear light-colored dresses, laugh loudly at the market, forget my keys at the gate, and not freak out thinking someone had broken in. Of course, the fear didn't evaporate. It just changed places. It stopped being a tenant and became a visitor. It strikes from time to time, but it no longer lives here. I received an invitation to speak at a school, to tell my story to a group of teenagers. I thought about it 1,000 times before accepting. Who am I to teach anyone? But I went. And when I stepped onto that makeshift stage with plastic chairs and poor lighting, I saw in their eyes what was once mine: mistrust, fear, curiosity hidden behind furrowed brows. And I began, not with pretty phrases, but with truth. I said, one day someone tried to erase me, and they almost succeeded, but I'm here. At the end, a girl approached me, 13 years old, freckles on her face, bitten nails. She looked at me and said, "You seemed weak when you were talking, but now I see. It's just that you don't pretend to be strong." That broke me down, because that was it. I wasn't strong like they wanted me to be. I was alive. And that, my dear, was more than they expected of me. I continued visiting other schools, centers, small events. I spoke softly in a corner without a microphone, but each of my words was a nail hammered into the board of shame that so many carry silently. I met incredible women. Some were elderly, with stories they had swallowed for 50 years. Others still had the milk of childhood in their mouths, trying to understand why someone made them feel dirty. They all wanted the same thing, to be heard without being doubted. I wrote another book. It wasn't love. I gathered stories from several survivors. Each one told a piece. I didn't mention names. I didn't reveal too many details. I just put in what hurt and what healed. I launched it at a small event. It wasn't a bestseller, but it became a manual for some, and that was enough. One day, Alicia wrote to me saying she was going to take the college entrance exam. Psychology too. She wanted to understand what hurts others. I was stunned, proud, and with that feeling that only those who were once seeds and became shelter can feel. My mother grew old. Her hair turned completely white. Her wrinkles deepened, and the silence between us turned into respect. We didn't talk about the past, but we didn't pretend it didn't exist either. Sometimes she looked at me with sadness in her eyes, and I understood. Each of her wrinkles was an apology that never quite came out. I moved into a small house with a porch and a yard. I planted lavender. I adopted a dog. I named him Chance, because that's what I had, a chance. To not let that define me, to turn scars into words, and words into bridges. One Sunday, I sat on the porch with a mug of tea and thought about everything. I felt no anger, no pity, no pride. I felt only the peace of someone who survived without turning to stone, of someone who cried, screamed, wrote, spoke, and was not silenced, of someone who, despite everything, can still smile without asking permission. And if I speak today, my dear, it is because you listened to me, because you had the courage to follow every bit of this story, not out of curiosity, but out of humanity. If this story touched you, leave your like, not for me, but for all of us, because while one speaks, others find their voice, and mine, my dear, after so much silence. Now no one can take it away.